Olakule joining us on Freshly Pressed. Good morning.
Good morning, Zibi. Good morning, Zibi. Finally putting a face to the name, and I think we're still in the Independence Anniversary mood.
Yes.
Happy Independence Anniversary, Nigeria.
Thank you. I mean, we all love Nigeria and we hope for the best. And it's a pleasure to officially meet you, Olakule. All right, so let's get straight into it. You can be a part of the conversation. If you want to let us know what your thoughts are, please send them to us via WhatsApp. The number is 0809 440 You can also tweet at smooth981. And don't forget to use the hashtag freshlypressed981. All right, so let's get straight into the conversation. And the NNPC, we did speak a little bit about the NNPC earlier in the show today on Business Express, posting, really high profit numbers. But Mr. Mele, who's the GMD, has called for capital punishment for people who engage in vandalism and oil theft. So, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigeria National Petroleum Limited, Mr. Mele Kyari, has lamented the high level of oil theft, vandalism, and infrastructure in the Niger Delta. Now, he made this while speaking at an appearance with top management officers of the agency, and they had appeared before the Senate Joint Committees on Petroleum, upstream, downstream, and gas. Now, there was a certain Senator Albert who sort of made a revelation that coming from Port Harcourt, he discovered that illegal oil refineries, crude oil theft, and vandalism were just among some of the not so productive activities going on in the area.
We've spoken to this several times on this show. The first thing is that the Nigerian government seem to be helpless about handling this situation. If this is our mainstay, this is the gold and the goose that lays the golden egg, as it were. I do not think that there should be a reason for us to be having this kind of conversation. January to date, NNPC has not contributed any money to what the federal government has been spending. We lose an average of about 400, now I hear 600,000 barrels a day to theft. It means that it is big business. 600,000 barrels in one day is not what I'll put in my pocket and walk out of Port Harcourt or Warri or Escravos or even Nigeria's itself. So it must be very visible. Who are the people doing this? The illegal refineries, who are the people behind it? We're talking about capital punishment. I don't think that we should be setting laws for punishment yet, when we have not put in place things to discourage people from doing these things. I repeat again, 600,000 barrels in one day. That's about what 600,000 times 159. That's the number of liters that it is. So you can imagine how big the size of the vessel that's going to move that out of that area in that day is. So who will then say that even if we all closed our eyes, we will still see this vessel pass? I mean, so asking, there's nothing wrong in setting laws, yes, but the first thing you need to do is you help to keep the honest man honest. It is where there is no law to keep the honest man honest that the man thinks that, okay, I can get away with these things. You can look at all of us everywhere in the world. It's a natural thing for man to want to cut corners, to want to cheat the system. But when there are laws, when you know that there are consequences for what you're doing, it keeps you away from it. The other aspect of the story that he spoke to about the social problem that people don't get to even know whether they are working for a legal refinery or not. And so how do you want to address that? Is enough to paint the problems. I don't think that he was named the MD of NNPC Limited to be describing the problems for us. I think he's there to be bringing solutions to the problems that we already know. All of us can describe the problems NNPC has today,
Right.
and today we need to be having solutions. And maybe one of the solutions is providing is that they should make a law for capital, but also don't forget we're in a world today where everywhere in the world, everybody is moving away from capital punishment. And that's where we are now headed.
Right.
So that's another thing that we should also consider in making this law itself. So it's neither here nor there. It's good news that they made money. He announced earlier in the week that when they released the audited report, that it was in the green, not in the red. Like it was a continuum from last year. Last year, there was a there was I can't remember the exact number. So it's an improvement on last year's one for what all the reasons that they may have put together. But as long as this problem subsists, we would never be able to reach our potential. And because let's just close it there so that we're
Right.
not
Flogging.
overflogging
Yeah.
it. We need to do solutions, not describing the problems. That's where I end it.
All right. Devo is going to join us in just a few minutes here on Freshly Pressed. But let us know what your thoughts are. We'll take them later on in the show. 0809 444 So I want us to move on and talk about ASU. This is a lingering problem. This strike has been on since February, started as a warning strike for several months, and it's now an official strike. Students have been out of school for so long. And the president says, in fact, he's accused the ASU, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, of being complicit in the corruption that is going on in the education sector in the country. And the Speaker of the House of Reps, Mr. Bajabia Miller, had stated that the president accepted the report on the engagement of numbers. And then we're also hearing, and this is confirmed actually, two unions have been registered here in Nigeria, Konwa and Nampa. So what do you think about this?
So looking through the story, I highlighted four things, right? The corruption, the autonomy the university craves, the shift in position of the federal government and ASU with respect to this strike, and the breaking of the monopoly in quotes of ASU or all the the labor unions in the university system. Now, if we go through it quickly, corruption. Again, why are we describing the problems? We have all the institutions to tackle corruption in this country. There is the ICPC, there is the Servicom, there is the EFCC. All of them are there to chase these things. And these people always say that if we have evidences of any of these things, send it to us to investigate. If the president is sure, because he says he is aware, let him send in these people to these universities to go and check these things. Of course, we know that these things would exist in these places. There was a university that went to the Senate and said that they've not been able to do audit report because the auditor went blind. There was a university that said something also almost similar. We know all these things. We know there's a university that the VC was accused of splitting contracts and so on and so forth. So these things are there. Let the agencies empowered by law go in there and do their job. Don't be describing what the problem is about that. To the autonomy. If the university is asking for autonomy, what I see is, for example, a university needs 10 faculty staff. They have two, but they cannot employ new staff unless they get clearance from the office of the Secretary General of the Federation. They get from head of service, they get from accountant general. It will as well take like 10 years before you employ one person in that place. So those kind of autonomy the university will be able to have to fill in their faculty staff as quickly as possible. And that's why you have this students lecturer ratio that is so bad, because the university cannot over time or at regular intervals go over this kind of process.
Right.
So if I need 2 today, I start today. I need 10 next month, I start there next month. When am I going to close those 2 events if I can't do them quickly and move on with other things? The third one is the breaking of the registration. Now, the Congress of Nigerian University Academics, the origin of that was in Obafemi Awolowo University in 2016. There was a local whatever, and it took about 2-3 years unresolved. And was from there that some of the members went and formed Conwa. And as of today, I hear and understand that they have um, 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 affiliations in at least 12 universities,
Right.
other 12 universities nationwide, and it seems to be growing. Now, what is going to be the interest of Conwa vis-a-vis interest of ASU? I just picked a quote from the promoter of Conwa um I just picked one of the quotes. It says, "We will ensure that the nation is not traumatized again by academic union dislocations in the country's public universities." And I'm asking myself, what does that exactly mean? Does it mean that when there's a reason for people to exercise their rights to strike, they will oppose it? Is it the politics we're seeing? Is it the right thing to do? Must we have multiple unions in the same environment chasing the same thing? Don't forget, people also have their rights to of association and engagement. But all these questions are not things that one would want to take on the surface of it, as it were, because the government seems to be jubilating that they have two other unions in the university that can counter ASU right now. Maybe sometime down the line, this CONWA and NABDA, the Nationalization of Medical and Dental Academics, would even be more problem for government than ASU. They need to be future looking in respect of these things before they start jubilating that they are breaking ASU today, because ASU is the bad boy today. These two are the new babies. Sometime down the line, the switches may flip,
Right.
and those are the things. Now, in all of this that we have set together, the pleasing story of all of this is that now, like I've always maintained, matured people go into a room and have a conversation. People shift grounds from where your standpoint and agree at the point to move forward. These children have been at home, they've lost 3 academic years. We will say it's 8 months. But I use a real example. Children who were in private universities who went in 2020 are resuming year 3 this September
Right.
and October. The ones, their mates who resumed 2020 in the public universities are still in year 1. So that is the clear example of how much time
Right.
the children have lost to this strike. And we need to resolve it as quickly as possible, get our children back in school, give ASU to the extent of what they agree on, and let us move on quickly.
All right. So I want to bring Devo into the conversation. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, lovely to have you. So, what's your
Thank you.
position on this situation with the government registering these extra bodies for staff at universities? Is it some sort of divide and conquer method by the government?
Government, again, playing games with our future. It's happened before with the NLC when they registered the TUC many years ago as a, what I call it, alternate body to deal with. But eventually it didn't work. It turned upside down. Right now, TUC and NUC are literally peers fighting for the same interest. I don't even want to discuss this action by government because it's another clear action that government is not putting education at the priority of its deliverables. Unfortunately, as they say, because their children are not affected, they seem to toy with it and believe that education is just something you can put at the bottom of your issues to resolve. We're not talking about university education anymore. This is about the educational system in this country and our ability to empower our own citizens to be able to become productive. You see, it's a shame that we're having to explain this, and it's a shame that the people involved with these actions, amid all the corruption that's taking place, are people who have benefited, enjoyed the goodness of this country. It's a real shame, and honestly, getting to this point and seeing the ridiculousness of their meetings, um, I think all Nigerians should rise at this point in time because they're just not going to budge. So this is when you defend your democracy. There's nothing left. There's nothing left. Absolutely nothing left. This is
Hmm.
when you defend your democracy because when the government shows you that your interests are at the bottom of their own pursuits, you have no other choice than to defend your democracy.
All right, let's move on to our next story. And this is coming from the Daily Trust. The Police Service Commission fires 7 senior police officers and demotes 10. The PSC just yesterday dismissed 7 senior police officers over gross misconduct. Now, the commission also approved the reduction in rank of 10 other officers. Now, police officer Amma, who had rejected a $200,000 bribe in Lagos, got an integrity award. Just a little bit of a flashback. Now, the newsman had added about the situation where some of these officers were caught to have been found behaving badly in several situations across the country. What does this mean for police and civilian relationships? We're seeing some of these officers who have had less than stellar performances being brought to book.
I don't know why we're reading these stories because honestly, uh, we take shame to a new level in this country.
Hmm.
And I'm just being frank about it. The Police Service Commission doing what? They're firing 7 senior police. Do you know how many police officers are in the red? How many police officers have defaulted in this? What was NSARS about? Did we see much reactions or proactive um, corrective measures being taken by government? And usually ask yourself, how long did it take for it to get to even the Police Service Commission, outside the police itself, the whole bureaucratic process? This is literally a, how do I call it, a demonstration of a weak system, extremely weak system. I want to see fundamental restructuring in the police.
Hmm.
Don't cut off one leaf and tell me that you have removed a tree. Look, I don't know. I'm just ashamed talking about these things because we're laughing at ourselves when we do these things. You think you're deceiving the children or the youth of this nation when out of the 350,000 police officers, literally 50% of them are erring, not because that they're bad people, but because the system itself is defunct. And then you come in, just like last week, was it last week that they did a fake national honors list and took the honors of this nation and gave it to themselves?
Hmm.
Please, next topic.
Well, in the government has come out to say that list was fake.
Mm.
So
Can I quickly add something to this
yes,
police
please.
story? The light side of it that I saw. Interestingly, it's a civilian in quotes that chaired that committee, and I'm Justice Clara Ogunbi, and I'm just trying to think it up that okay, so as an outsider, I'm sitting in that and I'm hearing what they are saying about this policeman. That would I be able to single out any other police officer at all that was not even facing that panel to not have done the things that I am sitting to hear and sack these ones about? Now we have the fundamental problem is, like I always say about policing in this country, is that we have done this thing the same way for almost 100 years. What do motivational people speakers call when you do the same things the same way and you expect a different result? We've kept this thing this way for so long. We need to do something radical, a radical change entirely about our policing system. Whether it is police, state police, whatever name we want to call it, whatever structure we need to do, it is obvious that what we have today is failing. The same bureaucratic thing that makes recruitment into police force is the same thing we have. That's why we've not gone beyond 350. In 1988, population of census of 1988, we were 88 million. By 2006, we were 144, I think, and the projection now is that we're 200 million. And it's the same police structure of 1988, 2006, and now. How would it work? The men, the policemen buy their uniforms from their salaries. How is it going to work?
All right, so moving on to a report from this day. House investigates reoccurring national grid collapse. Now, the House of Representatives has mandated its Committee on Power to conduct investigations into the root causes of this incessant national grid collapse in the country. I think we've had 7 so far this year. Now, the committee was mandated to also look into Transmission Company of Nigeria, the TCN's capacity to address this rather ugly trend. So, I mean, this is not the first time, it's not the second time, it's about the 7th time it's happened this year. And Nigerians should be asking questions.
Yes, we should. So we generally have a short memory about a lot of things, or if not everything, about ourselves. So if you ask me today, I will say, power has been very good. I've had light at least 19 hours every day for the past 3 weeks.
Mm.
I forget about just last week when I didn't have for 4 of the 7 days of last week, for example. Okay. So the thing here is there are three levels to this thing: the generation, the transmission, and the distribution. The first part, the third part is being privatized. The middle part is in the hands of government, and that's the transmission company. For the past 40 years, the maximum the transmission company can handle is 5,000 megawatts. I hope I'm correct. The people on the first level, the generation, say they have capacity to do 12,000. So what happens to the 7,000 that the TCN cannot take? The distribution on the other side say that the consumers are not ready to pay the real value, so they are not even buying the 5,000 in full from transition company. So the problem in there is beyond investigating. Again, we need to be um, the power generation will say there's no gas. We're a gas producing country. Why should there be no gas for them to produce? What do transition company need to? We are spending some 16 billion some 10 years ago, no results. Now we are seeing some improvement now. The Siemens deal seems to be working now. Since the that one has started, maybe that one would help. Maybe then that we need to include, we need to look at our transmission. Maybe that's where the problem really is, such that we can have a system in place that can take all of what is generated, and we can make people pay for. And how will people be able to pay? Um, Metering is a major problem.
Mm.
People are not metered, so people consume electricity free of charge in a lot of places today in Nigeria, whether we like it or not. People bypass meters a lot, whether we like it or not. People do direct connection from the cables on the pole. So the enforcement, the monitoring, all of these things must go hand in hand. We cannot isolate one aspect of this thing and look at it and say that that's where the problem is. The problem is across board, and there's every reason for us. We all understand that if we make our power work, a lot of the things we call problems today in this country will disappear, right? And now Lagos State is doing a blue line that's going to run with electricity. So is it that Lagos is going to generate its own power? Good, now that is now on the concurrent list. If Lagos is generating its own power to run it, fine. But if it is going to be this same central one, can we guarantee the safety and continuous running of that blue line if power fails on it? Or is it that they're going to get guaranteed? So those are the things that the committee needs to be speaking to, not just to be traveling up and down and be describing the problems like I hate to hear.
Devo?
What can I say? You said it all.
All right. So let's move on to Punch. This one is coming from Ugeli. Three dead as anti EFCC protests turned bloody. Now, three people on Tuesday were shot dead after over 20 trucks filled with petroleum products were set ablaze by angry youth at Otodo in Ugeli North local government area. And this happened as the anti EFCC protest embarked upon by some irate youth had turned bloody. Now, the protest was ongoing just at the same time as, well, scores of other protesters who were carrying their placards had besieged the Afro roundabout in Warri, and they basically were trying to show grievance against the arrest and detention of some youth by the EFCC operatives.
Um, this is a very important story, even though it looks like a joke. Last week or 2 weeks ago, the EFCC came into Warri. They had a raid, of which they arrested about 95 youths who were alleged to have been engaging in fraudulent internet related activities, otherwise known as 419. Now, with the arrest came arrest of laptops, some gadgets and devices, of which they were being courted and under detention, of which they said they would be prosecuted, and those found guilty would be jailed. Now, I think the protesters, obviously the youths within this section in Wari, were very angry and they decided to revolt. So what they did was they mounted one of the junctions, and in the cause of their protest, it got violent. Some trucks actually were ignited and set ablaze, and on some of the media speaking to them, this was one of the uh, responses was one of the protesters that the EFCC has assumed an overbearing posture, that their own is becoming too much. We don't have good roads, schools on strike, no jobs, and EFCC is here chasing shadows. That tomorrow they will tell us that the Nigeria's Commonwealth have been stolen by mosquitoes, right? And that our money has been filtered away. Is it your father's money? That was what some of the
Yeah.
protesters were saying. Now, and that some of them heard that the EFCC was demanding 2 million to release any of those that were captured. Now, what I'm trying to paint here is, you see, the country is getting to a boiling point. This is when you talk about complete, abject, outright rebellion,
Mm.
when there's no sense in talking about um, picking people up for 419, because clearly they can see the insincerity in the nation. Clearly they can see that there are bigger fish who are obviously out there stealing our crude, stealing our subsidy, keeping our schools aground. And the EFCC is what? Chasing youths around. It's
Mm.
no longer making sense in the eyes of the youths. And you see, you're going to see pockets of this in different places. This is when you know that the temperature of this nation is at code red. Any little thing could blow over.
All right, let's take some messages. We've got a ton coming through. Abayomi says, "What will deter them if not capital punishment?" And this is a response to the call for capital punishment by the GMD. There's a process that has been truncated by the IOCs, government representatives, and the international buyer. Okay. Dami from Ikeja says, "At the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the government to ensure quality education for the people at all levels. It's clear that the government simply isn't interested. It's simply divide and conquer without addressing the real issues." D from Alausa says, "Capital punishment is also a type of a great disincentive if properly implemented. It's a preferred solution, not a description of the problem as asserted by Olakunle." And let's see, this one is from Oladapo. He says, "For crude oil theft, it's not about the punishment, but the failure of security agencies to apprehend the perpetrators. As it stands today, crude oil theft is a criminal act, but with the light in quote punishment it attracts, how many of the saboteurs have been arrested and prosecuted?" Okay, Tunde says, back to the ASU story, "it simply means that ASU can no longer hold us hostage because they're only fighting for their pockets. ASU is responsible for some of the mess that they claim to be fighting today." And I'll take a few more. This one comes from Idimapuza from Surulere. And what the government is trying to do is to break ASU's body on strike, which would never work. It would rather extend the strike. Someone should please remind the president we're not in a military era where everyone follows a last order. It's a democracy. And Fabian from Ekbe says, "Good morning. I hope as the world celebrates Teachers' Day, the president and the aspirants across all levels will be taken to task on their plans to improve the plight of teachers and the educational sector." All right, I've got a message. This one is from Shegun. He says, "The habit of ministers walking out during meetings with Nigerian stakeholders like trade union leaders must end. Any minister who does not have the courtesy or patience to sit through such negotiations, no matter how difficult, stressful, or lengthy, should be shown the way out. National interest trumps any misguided feelings on a minister's part of having been disrespected or not being able to have his or her way. Serious politics is not for people with thin skin and or bloated egos. especially when the lives and livelihoods of millions of students, teachers, and all are at stake. Okay, thank you so much, Shegun, for that. We're out of time. Yeah.
Quickly,
Yes.
today is World Teachers Day. Please call a teacher today and thank them for what they have done for you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alakule, and thank you so much, Devo, for joining us on Freshly Pressed.
The headlines.
Alrighty.
What happened to you?
I'm not a happy man this morning. Getting old is impossible. Hello, how are
Hi,
you?
how are you? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, I've not met you before.
Yes.
No,
What's the
I'm
name?
Zibi.
But yeah, this is President Zibi,
Oh yeah.
the world president Zibi.
Oh my days.
Okay.
Can you stop?
No,
Oh, you can
then
stop.
Okay, you're not